Hello and welcome to Becoming Your 2.0 podcast. My name is Adam H. Mortimer.
And I'm Damon K. Casabar, and we are declaring an all-out war on our limiting beliefs and our shadow self.
So if you're ready to overcome the things that have held you back, stop being stuck, and take your 2.0, the highest version of you, to the next level, join us on today's discussion. We're excited to have you here.
All right. Welcome to our Becoming Your 2.0 podcast. We are excited to dive right in and talk with one of my greatest friends and colleagues, and been working with this guy for a long time here. And this is Coach Gil Mciff. So I'm going to give everyone a quick introduction on Gil. From what I know, again, I've known him for over 20 years now. What is it, Gil? Like 20?
23.
Gosh, probably like 20. Yeah, 23 years. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've worked in so many different capacities in the likes of sales and, obviously Gil having done coaching now for a number of years and been a top coach and just an all around great individual here who I've come to love and adore and respect just because of all he taught me. I remember one thing that's funny with Gil when I first met him was that I thought I knew personal development. I thought I knew what was going on. I'd done all these studies or whatnot. And then I met Gil, and then it was like, I don't know anything. I thought I knew. And then he just kind of showed me all the different layers of personal development and how much more in depth you can go with it, where it's made a massive difference in how I approach self-help and personal development mindset work. So I'm excited to have Gil on our podcast today to kind of get his perspective and insight on this work of becoming your 2.0. I know Gil's done a lot, does a ton of work, not just has done, he's actually doing it now, having worked with so many students also worldwide. So Gil, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you, Damon. I appreciate that. And by the way, I don't know anything either. So we're both in a good place.
Okay. Being a little humble, aren't you?
Well, I heard Sadhguru say this a long time ago, where he said, if you really want to know life, the most important thing is that you don't take a position. And, as soon as you take a position, like, for example, I know, it's like a closed door to more, right? Because you kind of assume you know already. But you keep that door open, well, I'm pretty sure, and I kind of think, and I've been exposed to, and it makes sense to me, but you keep that open door, and it just seems like there's always more to come in. So I appreciate that perspective, but yeah, we're all learning and growing, right? And there's never an end to that. So yeah, I think we're in a good place with that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it just makes me think too, Gil, when I don't know if you were here for this. I believe you were when Joe Vitale, actually you're an integral part of getting Joe Vitale to work with us, and start on that journey with personal development. And I remember him coming in he's done a lot of meetings with us, but I remember one in particular, he said, if you say you've learned it all, I'm paraphrasing here, so I may be butchering it. But if you say that you've learned it all, then you've kind of spiritually died. Yeah. You've just sort of said, okay, I'm not open to more. I've arrived, whatever, all these terminologies that people come with. And even if you don't say it out loud, sometimes I think people think that they're just like, I'm good. I study this, or they stay within a certain, how can I say it? Maybe academics or whatever, and they study and all that. But then I guess that's my question to you. I want to kind of open up to a lot of our listeners, because this is all about becoming, going from your 1.0 version, your past conditioning, programming, your past self, whatever you want to call that, to now becoming your 2.0. So again, the key word becoming, because it's always something that you're working on, and it never really arrives at a certain point. So what would you say to that? People are sort of like, well, I think I've learned a pretty good amount, and I don't know if I want to learn that much more, because then if I do, then maybe it opens up doors that I don't want to go down yet. So what would you say to our listeners that are sort of like, well, yeah, of course I want to learn, but maybe struggle with making the change because of what it's going to require of them if they learn more and discover they have to make changes, if that makes sense. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it reminds me of some of the clients that we get that obviously they're further along the path than others, right from the get-go. especially working with some of these people who are in real estate investing. They didn't necessarily buy personal development coaching, but this comes with their program, and so I'm getting on the phone with them. And, I don't know if I need this mindset stuff. I feel like I'm pretty good. So I like to approach them right at the beginning and to say, look, I get it. You sound like you're more knowledgeable than, some people, and you've got some comfort and confidence with where you're at. But, my job is to really help people get from where they're at to where they want to be faster and easier. And I've never met any of probably about 6,000 clients is a safe guess about how many clients I've worked with. I've never met anybody who would say on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 10. Right? So I volunteer that to this kind of person, and usually their rational humility shows up enough to say, yeah, I can't say that I'm a 10, right? So here's where I'm at, but we're here because we're wanting to get there, right? If we were there already, we wouldn't be here. Yeah. So here's where I'm at. There's where I want to get. So if I can start off with a little bit of humility to say, this is where it is. This is where I'm at. And having a contrast to where I want to be, if I already knew, I would be there, right? So if we can all do that for ourselves, is open ourselves up to just a little bit of humility to say, okay, I'm here, I want to be there. Well, fundamentally, what has to happen to get from here to there faster and easier? If I keep doing what I've been doing, I keep getting what I've been getting. And if I have a long history of success, then some part of me is going to say, well, it's working, right? But if we're here in this conversation, there's still something else. And, we're not here to just preach to you what that something else is. Typically in coaching, we're going to have dialogue back and forth and uncover that. Even if somebody buys personal development coaching exclusively, this is what I'm here for, oftentimes the real reason they're here doesn't show up for maybe 2 or 3 weeks into their sessions. Right, because what you think you want isn't always what you really need. And so when we start making some progress and opening up doors that we hadn't considered before, things come to the surface. And as long as somebody's open and humble enough to be real and authentic, then we're kind of allowing that to come to the surface. And when it does, that's where the transformational work takes place.
Interesting. So you said real and authentic. I think that those words get tossed out like, kind of like a buzzword where it's like, yeah, that sounds cool. Yeah. And you see it on social media and all that. But from your perspective, of course, working in the trenches with people as often as you do, how do you craft up the real or the authenticity or the authentic self? Like, where do you even begin with that kind of work? It seems so daunting.
Yeah. It really is daunting, because if you're not authentic, what are you? Contrived. And the contrived identity can't survive the authentic, right? So which one are you feeding? Like the story of two wolves, right? Yeah. So instead of saying one's good, one's bad, one's authentic and one is contrived, which one wins the battle, right? The one you feed. And so that authentic nature is what's already here and now, behind the mind and body. So it's the authentic essence of what you are. So it's beyond mind, it's beyond personality, it's beyond identity. And so because it's beyond identity, it's beyond what I think about myself. And so now we're talking about the subject of presence. And for a lot of people, that word presence or authenticity is a word that they're familiar with. But because it threatens identity, then it has to become a possession for identity. Right. Yes, I already know.
Presence threatens identity?
Definitely.
Is that what you said?
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely. Presence, because presence is you, that authentic nature. So if you'd like to call it the soul or spirit, I don't care. If you rather call it consciousness or awareness, this is what you are. This is what's no longer here at your funeral. So that authentic nature, if you were to be able to back that up from the conditioning of the mind, which is your memory, your intellect, your identity. If you can back that authentic nature up from the mind, that's what presence is, creating a gap between the conditioning and that authentic you. So nurturing presence is the short answer, but it requires a lot of elaboration and clarification for most people because their identity can't survive it. Therefore, it has to assume, I know what that means, and even believe, well, I'm already doing that, right, in one way, shape, or form. So again, humility goes a long way to say, well, are you open to considering that that might not actually be what presence is, right? That identity might not actually be what you are, right? It may be how you are. And so, yeah, there is a lot of talk of going from 1.0 to 2.0. Personally, I believe that's trading one costume for another. Because isn't there a 3.0? And couldn't there be a 4.0?
Yeah, good point.
And these are great, and they might serve me really well in my endeavors, but authenticity is the 0.0, right? It's that still point behind all of these different identities we might be cultivating.
So fascinating. So if someone's, we have different people at different stages of, how can I say it? I don't want to say personal development, although that's probably the word that comes to mind is when you think of the word presence, and how that weaves into identity. Would you say that that's, if we can get that figured out, right? If there's a core area to work on in personal development, self-help, wouldn't you say that probably is one of the main points that you want to focus on to help other personal development type skill sets start working when you start with identity or identity shifting or what do you want to call it? In your mind, is it, being in the position you are, having coached many people, once you get that figured out, it seems like although the personal development doesn't get necessarily easy, but it becomes more, how can I say it? You're able to receive it, I guess, a little bit better when you focus on it. I don't know if have any thoughts on that.
It's complicated because people will already assume they know what identity is, right? But can I describe not what my identity is, but what is identity, period? And really closely tied to identity, we now also have ego, right?
Okay.
So ego is being identified with the mind and body. What is it that's identified with the mind and body? I am. What is this I that isn't the mind and body that's identified with the mind and body to say me, right? Look, I'm right here. This is me. Well, again, call it what you want. Soul, spirit, consciousness, awareness, capital S, self, authentic nature. When that real you is wearing this costume of mind and body, then it says me. And so what is that me? What shapes that me? And now here's my experiences. How much pleasure experiences have I had? How much pain experiences have I had? How many successes or failures have I had? All of that starts to weave into a narrative of me. And that becomes identity. So, if we wanted to get to the core, we're not talking necessarily about my identity. We're really getting present to what is identity. What is ego? And when we do that, we start separating from being identity. We start separating from being ego. And Eckhart Tolle has a great quote in The Power of Now where he says, the moment you disidentify from the mind and its conditioned patterns, this is where choice begins. So
that's powerful.
Choosing to create a new identity, right? I'm moving from, let's say, employee to entrepreneur. Right? I'm moving from struggling to abundance. Right? I'm going to practice that in my mind. I want to write those programs in my mind because I want those programs to govern my default behavior. So I want to behave in accordance with that so I can produce the results. Yeah, we can do some programming, and that's usually what a lot of people are buying coaching for, is I need help with that programming element. But I think you're right to say that if we wanted to get to the core of it all, we have to be addressing the cause of it all. And lack of presence, and again, presence is a really deep subject, but lack of presence is what produces ego, identity.
Oh, interesting. So let me back up too for a second, because, I've heard this saying too, and I know Adam and I talk about it a lot on our podcast, and that is, you can't really grow beyond your current level of identity. So if we're going to help you get to, for example, if I'm going to, let's use the case of an entrepreneur. We have a lot of students that are aspiring entrepreneurs. They're doing real estate. They're doing a number of things. And I've heard people say, well, I'd like to do it, but I've never done a business before, right? I've never become an entrepreneur. I've read books about it, but And that's the key word. They're saying, I've never become something like that. I'm learning all these cool real estate techniques and they've got good skill set training and things like that. But unless they have the identity, I guess, of an entrepreneur, for example, then wouldn't that be like a struggle for someone like that if they learn all these tools and programs and then their identity is such that, well, I'm a W-2 employee. And they're not saying this out loud, but maybe unconsciously, it's like, I'm a W-2 employee. I'm a blue collar worker. I work really hard. That's how I earn money. So do you have to do a lot of work on that type of identity into now, what does an entrepreneur think like? And what are they doing to become the person that they are? Does that make sense with anyone that's investors or starting a business where they have to lean into that new identity?
For sure, yeah. You could say in simplified terms that the 1.0 identity can't survive the 2.0, right?
Okay.
So in that way, the 1.0 doesn't, I want to say doesn't accomplish the 2.0, but it can, right? Because I can assert myself. And where the presupposition here is that I isn't identity. So identity is my conditioning and everything that I believe about myself, but I read a book, I got into Joe Dispenza, or I got into Joe Vitale, or I got into any of these, the gurus in the marketplace, and they're starting to teach me about neuroplasticity and rewiring beliefs and clearing limiting beliefs and, rewiring my identity, right?
Yeah.
Anthony Trucks is identity shift, and that's been some fun work to work with. We're actually working on identity. But if you're working on identity, what are you? What is identity? If identity is everything that I believe about myself, and I believe that it's never going to work, and I believe, right, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So objectivizing those beliefs, stepping back from the mind and saying, I have that program, and if I maintain that program, I'm going to continue to behave the same way and get the same kind of results. So I want to change the program. The world at large is going to approach this from two different directions. One, I want to change the program from the outside in, right? And that means I'll be happy once I get there. Yeah. And so the upgrade is more of an empowered state where I'm going to say, I'm going to change from the inside out, right? I'm going to fake it till I make it. I'm going to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, right? I'm going to do some nebulizing here.
Right.
But still, who's the one doing it, and what am I actually doing? If I'm doing it from the inside out, it's like a metacognitive position where I'm taking ownership over the cognitive processes, the programs, the beliefs, the neural pathways. I'm consciously making changes to that. But the greatest tool that's going to assist my success in making these changes is having a really clear understanding of actually what I'm doing. Right? What am I doing to the neural pathways? What am I doing to the brain? What am I doing to identity? And again, all of that's kind of preceded by what is a neural pathway? What is identity? So if I have that clarity, I can just be much more reliable to myself with the activities that I'm doing. Therefore, I'm not hoping these things are going to work. I know exactly what's happening. Everyone behaves naturally. Say it differently. Everyone naturally behaves according to their conditioning. Yeah, that's my natural behavior. That's just how I am.
Yeah.
So if I change the conditioning, then I change the natural behavior. And again, if I know exactly what I'm doing, it's just a much more reliable way to go from the inside out. Yeah,
gotcha. Kind of makes me think as you're talking there. I think you and I had a discussion about this before. Whereas, it's in Michael Singer's book, right? The Untethered Soul. That opening statement he puts out there, like something like, this above all else to thine own self be true. Well, to what self are you being true to?
Right.
If we don't, I'm going to be true to all the stuff that I've acquired over the years or the knowledge that I've gotten. And that's got to be right. Or once I start making money in real estate or whatever it is, now I can start to form an identity around that, right? Which I think, in your opinion, right, that's kind of dangerous ground to walk on if you attach it to an accomplishment. It's an accomplishment, it's great, but is it really part of your identity? So I think that's so fascinating about this work that we do with 2.0, 3.0, 5.0, whatever you want to call it. It's an elevation or just maybe it's a connection to what's already there. And we just haven't really fully connected with it. We're not really fully in choice, like you mentioned. We're kind of phase in and out between that. Does that make sense?
That's the word right there. You just said it, choice.
Yeah.
You're free to choose your identity, right?
Oh, that's an interesting one, yeah.
If you choose your identity right now, let's say I'm a successful entrepreneur, right? If you choose that right now, that doesn't mean poof, there it is, but that's what you're holding to be true on the inside, and you start to modify the programs. The challenge is, well, we talk about this in clearing limiting beliefs. If I have the limiting belief, well, a generic one, I don't deserve it. Many people think that if you do some kind of clearing technique, the emotional side of it, and you diffuse I don't deserve it, then, okay, that work's done. Now you just do the affirmation, I deserve it, I deserve it, I deserve it. I personally don't think that's going to clear the limiting belief. I think that's going to diffuse the old one and lay down a new one, but the old one's still there, right? The old one is built out of experiences that you had that were real, and you still hold them to be true. You just turned off the charge. So the wiring is still there, but this new identity, I deserve it, I deserve it, I deserve it, is now a competitive belief, right? So what happens when I live my life and I don't deserve it gets proven with a new experience? That old belief gets lit up again. Or I do have some success, the new belief gets reinforced, the old belief goes a little bit quieter, right? So as long as I'm making progress, I'm starting to believe the new because I'm having experiences, but the old belief tends to be niggling in the background, and so many clients are saying, I've been at this for 10, 20, 30 years, and I thought I'd cleared this before, but it's still here. It's because that old neural pathway is still there. It never got adjusted, right? It just got turned off to whatever degree, and now it's back there dormant. So instead of making beliefs dormant, and the reason why this is relevant is because identity is comprised of thousands of beliefs, right? So we can say the exact same thing to an identity. If I really still subconsciously believe that I'm an employee, and I start creating I'm an employer, right? From the outside in, I start believing this, but do I still have conditioning and programming and identity that could sabotage this? I think so. So objectivizing identity is like objectivizing beliefs. And the more I know about this, the greater my capacity is to generate a permanent result here.
Interesting. And it gets me thinking, when you say like identities and beliefs, and is your identity, is the series of beliefs that I've conditioned, let's say, my identity, or is an identity an entirely separate thing, if that makes any sense, right? Because those beliefs can change. So if my beliefs are changing, then my identity is changing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's true. The argument to that is to what extent, right? So if you think of a network marketing downline, right? There's somebody at the top, and then they brought in 5 people, and they brought in each 5 people, pretty far down the line. This is what maybe identity at the top is comprised of. Below the top, you've got narratives and biases. And narratives and biases might be my first leg down line. Who they brought in, what are those narratives and biases built out of? They're built out of attachments and aversions. And what are attachments and aversions built out of? They're built out of beliefs. And what are beliefs built out of? They're built out of experiences. So I've had thousands, if not millions, of experiences that turned into beliefs, that turned into narratives and biases, that turned into identity, right? So if I cleared a major limiting belief, getting to a taproot, I can cover a lot of ground, but if my identity is still filled up with 10,000 other beliefs that suggest something else, then I do feel the value in the gain from that shift, but there's still the potential of a behavior that will just bring in new beliefs that reinforce the identity. So when you're approaching identity, it's a much more significant domain than just the beliefs. Again, modify the beliefs, you get some change. Modify the identity, you get some bigger change. and transcend
Right.
identity altogether, and you get what you're really after: fulfillment.
Oh, no, that's the next. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Freedom, peace, love, right. All the words that you see there. And that's where I wanted to, I know there's so much we can uncover with that part of it, but I think let's just kind of say right now is where our listeners are sort of doing this work, and we're always going to be doing this work, right? This, like I always say, it's our minds are like gardens, and if we don't tend to them, they're going to get overrun by noxious weeds and beliefs and data, right? Until we determine, okay, this is who I get, or that's the other part, is like, this is who I am, this is what I do. And that's part of the identity work we do. But it's kind of fascinating to see how this is becoming something that you have to practice, right? It's something where our listener is saying, well, I've got it. It's great. It's my conscious, and maybe my unconscious is recording it too, but, and hopefully it's enough. But that just goes to show, how vital it is that we keep pouring into this. And would you say that identity work is like constantly being worked on? Like you never stop working on crafting or strengthening your identity, if that's the right word?
Yeah. I mean, I think it is until we really come to an understanding, a very clear understanding of what identity is, because that's going to be your greatest challenge. How can I work on shifting my identity if I'm not really clear on what identity is?
Okay, and that's good point.
That's a tall order. That's a tall order, right? It's like you tell me, describe, without using your mind, describe what the mind is. That's a tall order, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how do I do that? And so with my identity or my personality or my persona or my predispositions, what am I actually working on? So I encourage people to stay open, like we were talking about in the beginning, with what is that? Help me understand it. Maybe on a confidence scale, I'm at a 7. I'm pretty sure I know, but staying in that receptivity and humility is let's go further until I can say I know with absolute certainty, from direct perception and immediate experience right now, that I isn't identity. I can tell you exactly what identity is, and I can tell you exactly what I am that isn't identity. That's the place to nurture if we really want to get skill in modifying identity.
Interesting. Gosh, so much to do. I mean, again, the more I talk to you, every time I talk with you, Gil, there's always like another piece that shows up and says, oh, now I got to study that. No, not I get to, right? I'm going to change the way I look at that because I'm making it like a chore, right? Like, oh, I got to do this now. No, and that's the thing is, I think when you said, just to wrap it up too, when you said something important, we'll go back to this word, and that's choice, right? It's that, what is it? Is that space between stimulus and response, maybe? I think that's, I don't know how Eckhart Tolle phrased it. Maybe he's the one that said something. That gap in between there is where choice is. Now I can choose. I don't have to be victim to this or whatever. I'm choosing to do that. And that's a lot of what our work is as coaches, is to get people to operate more from choice rather than from their programs and conditioning and all that, right? Would you say that that's sort of the theme, or maybe one of the core areas that you would tell your students in the work we're doing?
Yeah. Another point of distinction, this might take us down another little bit of a rabbit hole here.
We'll do another show on that one then.
Okay. Yeah. Just the point is that there's a big difference between a decision and a choice.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So decisions are like a reflexive habit based on an interpretation of pleasure and pain. Decision, to cut off or to cut out. And if choice begins the moment you disidentify from your mind, then there's more of an empowered choice or a reactive decision happening. And identity tends to make the reactive decisions because that's my interpretation. This is good, that's bad, I can't, whatever. Whereas choice can see that and say, it doesn't matter if it's going to be hard. It doesn't matter if it's expensive. It doesn't matter if it's going to take a long time. I choose to do it. So I'm accepting the responsibility to do what's fundamentally required, meaning I'm not going to argue with it. So many of these things get unpacked in our conversations just because, again, we need clarity here. We need to really understand what we're talking about. Otherwise, we're playing pin the tail on the donkey, hoping it works out. And a lot of times it does, and we still don't really have that foundation. That's why people are coming back over and over and over again to different tools and resources and books and authors is because they're getting it, but there's still something fundamental that hasn't been realized yet. I like to help escort people into that personally.
I love it. This is awesome. Well, I know we're going to have a part 2 and 3 and beyond with you, Gil. So we'll leave it at that for now. Hopefully all of you took some good things away. I know I did. And there's a lot more to learn. That's what I know with Gil, is that whenever I talk with him, it's like, and there's just so much more to learn, and it makes it all that more exciting to do this kind of work when you look at it from that perspective. So thank you, Gil. Appreciate you. We'll be on the next show. Okay.
Let me just say at the end here, all of those
please.
of you that are working with Adam and Damon, is you are in good hands. There's nobody out there that works harder than these people, that has more sincerity and the combined knowledge of these guys. I mean, you're definitely in good hands. You've got humble people. You've got knowledgeable people that are passionate about making a difference. And if they're here for you, yeah, you're in good hands. So you guys have got my endorsement.
Awesome. Thank you, Gil. Well, we've learned from you. We're always going to say that, right? Because we truly have learned from you. So thank you so much, my friend. Yeah, appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
What was your top takeaway that you want to take into your week and apply and practice?
So if you can pick at least one thing, we call this the 1% rule. Just get a little bit better today than you were yesterday. We can't wait to hear about your successes, and we'll see you on the next episode.